Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the MN Viking Zombie YouTube and Twitch channel. So wild. I'm introing my buddy's channel. I don't want to take it over, but this is Adam Carlson's channel, and my name's Kyle Smith. I'm so glad to be here. We're back doing another horror movie review. Adam, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually enjoy that you take over those intros because I do the outros on our football podcast, and I recently actually streamed a little bit of Overwatch pack opening on my Twitch channel. So it was nice to get a little bit back into that. Hopefully I'll do some gaming streaming soon. But that was a nice little entry into getting back into things and seeing how it works streaming from the Xbox Series S. So yeah, and we're here to talk about a movie, No Exit.
Yeah, we're going to review the movie No Exit. I actually signed up for Hulu today just so I could get this. And I'm very happy because now I have Netflix and Hulu. So you can pretty much get, and I have Amazon. So I think we have pretty much no limits now on our.
Oh, I got back. I got the Paramount Plus. I got the Peacock. I got all the streamers. Well, I guess the only one I don't have right now is the Disney. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of horror on the Disney for us.
Probably not. But I have to say before we get started, two things related to the show. You'll be proud. I haven't told you this yet because I tried to do it today and it failed. I use StreamYard. We use this for our football podcast. Shout out if you watch that at the Purple People podcast. If you're a Minnesota Viking fan, check that show out. I linked my personal YouTube page, and I'm going to be able to start doing my Twitch and my YouTube when I go live and my Facebook. So
boom.
YouTube takes 24 hours. I finally took your advice. Better late than never. You guys, anybody that watches this later, send me some good vibes out there. Adam, you will love this. I put an offer on a house. It is going terribly right now because one of the agents is not doing so well. Not mine, but the other person's making it very difficult. But it's a cabin in the woods. It's kind of creepy at night, and this is going to make for really good horror movie reviews. I'm very excited about it.
Cabin in the Woods is an underrated movie, I tell you.
It's a good film. I'll send you guys more details once I lock it in and we're like officially under contract. But might have a new space to finally call home. Finally, not stop moving. For you Purple People pod fans, you know I've been all around the world 18 times, so. We're finally going to sell.
You can have a nice little studio to sit down and do your stuff in, which would be amazing.
I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to set it up and have. I don't even know what the final product's going to be. But anyways, I'm talking about me. We're going to talk about No Exit. This movie came out in 2022 this year, and
it's made by Hulu, right? A Hulu exclusive.
This is a Hulu exclusive. I started it on my phone, finished dinner, and then I transferred it to my computer. And outside of Dennis Haysbert, I have never seen these actors or actresses before, and I got to tell you, the first thing that drew me in was this is another movie we reviewed on this channel where the casting, they did a really good job. Did a really good job on the casting here.
Now, I will preface this when we're going in. I do feel like this is more of a suspense thriller than a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
This might not be something that horror purists watch and be like, oh, this really satisfied my need for a horror movie. It might not do that.
Yep, I would agree.
But that said, there was a lot of things that people can relate to in this movie. The main character had a sick mom who I believe had a brain aneurysm.
Brain aneurysm is correct.
And she was trying to fight to get home, but at this moment she was in a rehabilitation facility for and she wanted to leave but they can get a hold of her doctor to get clearance for her to go. And it set up a situation for her where she had to break out and race to try to get to see her mom. And then the weather hit.
This is a cool part of the film you're talking about, because the one thing that this movie does well, and we're going to get into it very in depth, guys, but you're dealing with characters that are unvetted. It's a slow onion layer peel or banana peel of these layers. You don't really know who's who at the very beginning. When you meet all of these characters, you think it's this guy, this girl, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that they're always working against that you mentioned is a nasty blizzard. And this is what traps them together. This is what makes the situation come together. And that underlying theme coming back it ends up showing itself at the end of the movie, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, as someone who has been clean and sober for a decade now, I mean, I did see this as being a movie that was relatable in that way, that with everything going on and falling apart around her. She was trying so hard not to fall back into her ways, but the temptation when she had, I'm not 100% sure. She did use some drugs when she was in the car when she pulled over, right?
She did use them at the end as well. In that nasty scene
Well,
at the end.
I'm going to talk a bit about that scene, but what I meant was the one where she pulled over before the cops knocked on her window. She did pull over and use some drugs, right?
I can't confirm or deny. That might have been one of the times me trying to catch up before the deadline to the show. I hit the 10-second jump forward.
Because she passed out in the vehicle, and then the cops knock on her door and tell her it's a weird place to pull over and have her rest, and told her to move ahead and go to the visitor center, which is one of the nicer visitor centers I may have seen in a while. It's the way that they're often portrayed, though, in video games and movies, and I've never really seen a visitor center used that way. For
I feel like a lodge.
Yeah, it definitely did, but
yeah, it was a homey feel. That was a nice turn. I've never personally seen that. I guess for that area of the country, which I'm guessing is somewhere on the West Coast or Midwest or Northwest, Pacific Northwest, somewhere on that side of the country, because I'm all the way on the East Coast here, for that kind of layout and building, I guess it would make sense for that kind of weather. It was built and equipped for that. I'm not even sure if they shot this movie in real time when it was that cold out, but that place sure looked like a lodge that would be cozy and warm. So it was a cool little building there, cool little structure.
Yeah, it was under construction in some ways, boarded up, and in some spots for doing some renovations and things like that. But for these travelers that were in there, there was a small assortment of very unique characters in that little visitor center, and your first impression of them all was kind of spot on for me. I don't know how it was for you.
Of course, if you come into this blind, you're going to think one thing, and then things are going to unravel, and you're going to see that some of these characters are not who they say they are. Complete opposite of what you had thought. But I have to redact something that I said. I do remember the character that plays Sandy, Dale Dickey. She's actually in one of my favorite a modern Western called Hell or High Water. She's in the very opening scene of that movie when the banks get robbed. And I remembered her. She has
is that the blonde woman?
Yes, the older blonde woman. She has a gravelier voice, a little deeper voice. She's in Hell or High Water, and I was racking my brain the entire time. I was like, where have I seen her before? But
I was not familiar with her, but I actually felt she had one of the stronger performances in this movie.
She's a good actress.
I was drawn to her acting, and for me, I get lost a little bit easy and get confused, and I get impatient sometimes. But whenever she was delivering dialogue or interacting, I was paying attention.
She has a short role in Hell or High Water, but she delivers it great. She's actually a victim in that movie, which is crazy. She seems like a victim in this movie too, as it unravels, but I love her interaction with her. I guess it was her husband or her fiance or boyfriend, Ed, who is played by Dennis Haysbert. He's been in The Wire. You know him. You've heard him in the Allstate commercials.
Oh yeah, that voice is iconic.
Yeah, you can't not recognize that guy unless you've been living under a rock. But they work well off of each other, a yin and yang of sorts. And that's not a color play on color there. That's a personality trait where he's the strong, ex-Marine. She's the sensible nurse, and she tries to keep everything under wraps. You can immediately see that Ed has a gambling fix, and they're together when they all introduce themselves. They are introduced to an array of characters. The first guy you see after this couple is a guy named Lars, who's very strange, a little odd from the normal societal standard.
Right.
And then a young man, good-looking guy, Hispanic guy, wakes up. His name is Ash, and he comes in to join the party. I'm telling you guys a scene in the movie where this is where character development and the story starts to tell you about their backgrounds, where they're all playing a game called Bullshit, which is really fun. I've played that game before. Ed wants to play poker, but not everyone knows poker, so he says, you know what? I'll try anything once. And
did it make you mad that they played it wrong?
They did play it wrong, and I did notice that, and I haven't played that game in probably 10 years since the military taught it to me, but
You can't go back and play.
And one of the things that I always noticed was, all right, Adam, we lost you for just a second. I'll wait till you get back on.
There I am.
There you go.
But yeah, you can't go back and play jacks after queens have been played. That don't happen.
Well, that's the thing too. We always had a rule in the military. You have the preface before the game says, "Hey, we're starting." You lay the rules. If you forget a rule, unless the table votes unanimously that it's egregious, you can't go in either and jump in and say, well, we don't do that. Well, sometimes we have people that haven't played here. You didn't explain that. That's on you, But this is where the characters unfold. You can tell that Lars has kind of a short temper and he doesn't like getting made fun of. Ash seems early on like the sensible guy. Darby is trying to keep her identity sort of hidden because she's breaking the law currently. And the whole thing about Darby, and this is played by Havana Rose Liu, she is the main character. She has a drug addiction. She's got a really, really torn and tattered relationship with her sister and her mother. She's just trying to get to her mother. She's trying to do the right thing by doing all the wrong decisions. And
she
goes
keeps getting
outside.
messages from her sister that her mom doesn't want her there, and that she shouldn't leave her therapy to get done. And the therapy session before she got that announcement, she didn't seem to be taking a lot of I don't want to say she isn't taking her recovery seriously, but she definitely wasn't caring much for that group environment.
She's a classic example of a hard-headed, stubborn person, much like myself, where it's going to take a special person, a special event, and a special way of communication of really breaking through. Because going back to the beginning scene of the movie where they're in rehab in the group therapy session, there's a woman there that, she's had her stints in and out. They're kind of the same character. They've been in and out of rehab, but one plays it very well to her advantage because the staff will like her and get privileges. Whereas Darby doesn't play that game. She's very blunt and forward, but
and she's also lied and tried to get phone calls and other things in the past. And now when she wants something like a phone call or to be able to go visit her mom, they're not as lenient or easy with it. And they're definitely not going to let her do anything without talking to her doctor first. So that whole thing was really kind of the lead up to her having to break out and go to this trip to see her mom before she passed. And then she arrives at that visitor center. She plays that game of cards and, but when she goes outside, she finds something that's kind of interesting.
Very interesting. There's an old blue grayish Chevy Astro van, and she hears noises coming from the van, which she thinks is screams. So she obviously goes to investigate and finds a kidnapped girl that's about 9 or 10, and she doesn't know what to do. And holding this in built the tension with the movie, which is great. You could probably already tell early on, I'm a big fan of this movie. I love the thrillers. And what I was going to say before, I didn't want to interrupt you, was these little things that they put in that make sense. They're not so obvious that they give the audience a treat, but it made more sense as it went along. Like, okay, why is she stressed? Why is she in this situation? You hear when she had called the doctor, they said, hey, it's Friday night. You're not going to get a hold of him. We got the answering machine. You're thinking, oh, crap. It's the weekend. Right. Terrible weather. So that, to me, already set a mental preface of you're kind of stuck there for the weekend. You just got to be prepared to be in the suck for at least 2 days until, that passes. But anyways, they're stuck there. The characters have the game of bullshit. It kind of gets tense because Lars gets angry. So she goes outside, finds a girl in the van, and she doesn't know what to do with herself. So she's taking time, not telling anyone, and she's trying to figure out who took this girl and who she belongs to and why is she there.
Yeah, they're sitting around that table, and she's trying to get information out. What are your names? Where are you from? Mm-hmm. Trying to match up locations with license plates and things like that. And it's never explicitly said that's what she's doing. But as you're watching this movie, that's where her head's at, because she wants to learn as much as she can about who she needs to be afraid of because of this kidnapping, how she can get this little girl inside to warmth and safety. But it's going to be one heck of an adventure as to trying to get it done. And it sets up a really tense scene where, what do you do in that situation? Who can you trust?
And to your point, unknowingly, she doesn't know. So we're about 20 minutes into the movie now. We see that Lars is kind of suspicious. Ash seems pretty stable. And you find a girl, you want to get to her. It's freezing outside. So you feel terrible for her. She's cold. She's got duct tape over her mouth. So you don't know what's going on. We find out she makes her way back to the van eventually, and we find out that Lars has a gun in his back pocket or in his butt crack, and she's hiding in the van trying to figure a way to break this girl to safety. Now, the trouble is, and the other part of the movie that's super tense, is even if you get this girl out, you can't leave. There's nowhere to go. She drove in a Firebird, I think, She's not getting through that mess in
No.
that kind of car. So that hopelessness really sets in quite a few times in a couple of pivotal scenes. And that's where I felt the most bad. I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, well, you can't leave anyways because you're not getting out in a car like that. So she's trying to be crafty and figure out where everything is. And then she bumps into Ash in the women's bathroom, which is really interesting.
But it felt a little bit stereotypical that Lars was the one that was the one that went out to the car, because on first impressions, you're like, well, that guy's definitely not a guy that you really want to put a lot of trust and faith in.
Yep.
But when you've watched enough of these movies, you know that there's going to be some other stuff coming. And
which
so
is exactly what happened there.
Beats up in the bathroom. Lars comes in when she's talking to Ash, and in order to keep them off the topic, she pretends like they're making out in the bathroom, and he leaves, and she confesses to him that there's a little girl in a car.
That
and
she's
they come up with
confessing
a
to
plan.
Ash, just for clarity.
Yep.
And Lars is suspicious. He can tell that she's been outside, and he's worried he's going to be caught. So she's confessing to Ash, and I'm thinking, okay, I've been around the block a few times. I had to put my Adam Carlson hat on and say, all right, someone is not who they say here. And this isn't necessarily a whodunit film. It gets pretty to the point pretty quick. It's just a matter of how evil some of these people are, and then you find their motives. And I thought that was interesting. She thought enough to confess to the guy that looks the most stable. You don't know the nurse. Ed has kind of a gambling thing. He's kind of rough around the edges. On appearance and first impression, you would think that Ash is probably the guy you could trust, but it turns out you can't trust him at all.
But yeah, she goes out, and after they get their plan, Ash rigs a nail gun to act as a real gun of sorts, and they come up with a plan for her to go out and retrieve the little girl and be able to handle the situation. So she goes out, she takes tape off the little girl's mouth, and the little girl asks where the men are. And that shocks her, because she assumed it was only the one man.
This is the part of the movie where everything kind of goes sideways from any of that predictability you have, because you think she's going to do the right thing. And she said men as in plural. And then there's a 10-second pause there where you get to see the confusion, the terror, the shock, the anticipation, the what am I going to do? Because now she understands, oh, crap, these guys might be in it together. There's more than one. And we don't think it's the couple. So she finally and quickly realizes that Ash and Lars are in on it together, which make it kind of unlikely couple in the beginning. I was like, why are these guys together? But you've got to have the brains, and you've got to kind of have the fall guy. And let's be clear on that from the start. Lars was always going to be the fall guy.
Oh, yes.
Ash was always going to sell him out when times got dirty. But yeah, she finds out they're working together. And then the mood really picks up in intensity. And you're like, oh, crap. What are we going to do?
Yeah, from there, things get intense. They try to... There's a longer scene here where the main character is trying to talk to some of the other characters and get information around so they can be a little bit safer, because she already knows that if she can't escape there, she's most likely dead. And she's still got to worry about this little girl too. So she puts some trust in the nurse lady, and they have a little conversation, and they try to figure out who's gonna act as what, and it's a really strange movie when it reaches this point, because this is the branching point where things could go so many different directions, but instead it stays kind of linear, doesn't it?
It does. And what I like is they present some things in this movie where it's things you would notice. Like you would notice guys that keep walking out into this blizzard. There's something weird going on. You see their attitude and everything change a little bit, and you're like, why are they doing this? And then, Sandy, the nurse, comes in and says, if you want to talk about anything, I can kind of tell. She doesn't say it that I can tell something's off, but you can kind of tell with the way she's saying her words, her inflection, and her face. If you need to talk about anything that might be really wrong, I'm here for you. And you feel that sort of warmth. You're like, oh man, maybe she has a chance, because right now Darby is just hoping that she isn't caught. And that's the part where I think the movie really, this is right before it gets rocket launched into the big thriller part. This is a thriller. This is, like you said, not a traditional horror, but this is right before
Right.
it gets rocket launched into thriller. And
Well, we get some of these horror moments when like the two guys take her out in the woods, and it seems like they're going to execute her while they look for the little girl.
correct.
And she takes a mean tumble down a hill.
I thought she got shot there too. You didn't see, because I was expecting them to chase, blood prints or whatever. But that's the one thing you can say about this character, and I think Havana Rose did it great. Is she's a fighter, man. She has willpower and determination to keep going despite her addiction, which is kind of inspiring for the character that she plays.
Yeah, a gunshot does go off, and it alerts in the visitor station that something's not going right outside.
Meanwhile, you alluded to it a little bit, but just to clarify, little girl finally escapes from the van. There were some box cutters that Darby had when she was in before. When she realized the little girl said "the men," cuts herself free, and she's running around in the woods. Ed figures this out by some footprints, and they find the little girl who's played by Mila Harris. Her character's name is Jay. Jay is in the blizzard, and she's unconscious at this point. So worried that she might freeze to death, they bring her inside. He and what's his character's name here? Sandy. Ed and Sandy bring her inside to help her out. And at this point, they know something is wrong. Darby has to find her way back. She actually outsmarts the two and gets back through a little hole in the wall, literally a hole in the wall in the women's restroom. She lets them know what's going on and says, "Hey, we have to go now. These two kidnapped this girl. We're in danger." And then that's metaphorically and actually physically where the shit hits the fan in this movie. There's a standoff, and you thought the tension was there, and it just builds. The standoff scene I really enjoyed, because not only do you find out more about more characters, but you're waiting on something to happen. I find this in a lot of music that I like. Is some songs I want something to happen and they won't give it to you. Well, they didn't give it to me at the time that I wanted it in this movie.
But can we talk about the generic and disposable segment of this movie with the little girl needing the meds?
Yeah, that was the easy haggling point there, and yeah, that was a little elementary.
Yeah, it felt completely unnecessary thrown in there, considering they're keeping this girl tied up in a cold van, coming out and starting it every once in a while.
Right. It was some, the Addison's or whatever, where if she has too much adrenaline, she'll die. And it's like, I'm sure going to the end of the spectrum of being stressed out, being handcuffed and taped up in your mouth, that's not going to help her adrenaline level. Right. I don't know that part.
Now,
yes.
This little girl, I'm assuming, because we heard a couple different stories about her being rehomed or her being held for a ransom.
Yep.
The stories got kind of crossed over and a little confusing, because what they were talking to in private was not what they were talking about when the nurse was around.
Correct. And I assumed at the end that her being rehomed was not a good thing.
No,
this was
did
not
sound great.
And poor Lars, that's where he comes in. I remember that part of the movie. He's like, "We're going to give her a new home, right?" And he's like, yeah, everything's going to be fine. It's like, no, dude, you're going to sell this little girl to God knows who for God knows what. It's a horrible thing. But this is the part of the movie where you find out more about other characters. There's a standoff. Ed and Sandy and Darby, Jay are all inside. The two perps are outside. They're negotiating. Perps have a gun. They do not. They have weapons of their own, but they're negotiating for meds. They say, "Hey, if you give us the meds, we'll give you the keys. You can just leave."
Yep.
But, they're not going to drive away in a storm like that, but they just want them to go, and they want everybody to be okay. And they realize, that's not going to work. We're going to take the girl with us, or we don't get our money. And then you find out from Sandy, when she is recognized from little Jay, that Sandy was actually her maid, and Sandy was a part of this whole thing.
Yeah, again, felt really strange, because is this a happenstance that she happened to be there? Is it that desolate of a road for traveling or was she like following them?
Yeah, that was never really explained, and I'm glad you brought that up, because she knows the two perps, Lars and Ash, and you could see, which was, God, if you want a scene that'll make your skin curl, you find out that Jay is kind of a spoiled brat. She's a rich person's daughter, or a rich couple's daughter. And she's making Sandy, who's clearly in her 50s or 60s, dance around on her TikTok and social media or whatever,
Right.
embarrassingly. And she says, if you don't do what I tell you to do, manipulating her, I'll tell my parents that I caught you smoking pot. So she's manipulating her and embarrassing herself on social media. But that was kind of her gig, was I'm your maid, whatever. Well, anyways, Sandy, and the long story short here is she stands by, and you can hear little Jay screaming as she's getting kidnapped, and she allows it to happen. She knows it happened. She lies to the police. She said I had my headphones on. I was vacuuming. I didn't hear anything, blah, blah, blah. That was never answered, though, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's the one negative mark I have on this movie. I was like, how do they know each other for real? Besides the money. The money's fine. That's obvious.
Because they did say they never met.
Exactly. How are they involved in, how is it, like you said, happenstance, and they just happen to be here and they're just trying to play it cool? And how did Ed not know any of this stuff? Come on, Ed, you're a Marine. You got to be more observant than that.
This is all super confusing.
Yes.
And then there's something else coming up later that I hate, but we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But yeah, so now we've got 3 people out of the 5 adults at the rest area that are in on this abduction.
Yep.
And the killing starts.
The killing does start. Sandy outs Ed, tells the guys outside. Ed lied and said, hey, I've got a gun too. Come on in. And he's just trying to buy time. I would probably say the same thing. They have weapons on themselves, hammers and big wrenches. But Sandy goes, he doesn't have a gun. And Ed is so pissed and heartbroken by the betrayal that they just allowed the 2 guys to come in. And once they take care of Jay and give her shot, Ash starts off, and he shoots Ed directly in the chest. Ed is gone very shortly after.
Oh, yeah.
He shoots Sandy as well. And then you kind of see the characters that you and I have talked about here is, okay, this guy's going to kill whoever he wants, whenever he wants, because he wants his money. He doesn't care who he harms.
Right.
And there's 2 people that you've been invested in this movie. And up until that point, you thought both of them were good people until you saw what Sandy was doing.
But because of the plot armor, the main character survives and only gets weirdly wrist nailed to a wall. So crazy. Very, very little blood with this nail going through her wrist.
Yeah, no, that part will make you, if you're a gore fan or you're an actual, the kill spray. We got 2 gunshots so far. You're not going to like that part because it's not very realistic. But
no,
she acts
not
well.
Whatsoever.
She acts like it hurts, but I don't see that being no. That would be extremely painful
with a lot of blood.
Yeah. So basically, after Ed and Sandy are gone, it's a battle. At some point before, we forgot to mention Darby has tossed the keys while the negotiating was going on before Sandy outed herself. So she's gotten rid of the keys. Nobody's going anywhere because she's the only one who knows where they are. And this is where the manipulation and the pain really starts. Ash says, hey, I'm going to kill you, or I'll kill her. I'll kill anyone. We have to go. Where are the keys? They find an inn once Jay comes back to try to manipulate Lars. They're looking for the keys. We're getting closer to the end of the movie really quick now, but I thought it was really nice that they had something to bond over. This poor little girl had someone that wanted to take care of her, that instinctual big sister role that Havana plays, Darby. But
they threatened to hurt the little girl.
Yeah, that hurts your heart when you hear that. You want to do what they say at that point because you don't want her to get hurt. And she did a good job. Darby did a great job in this movie of trying to protect her as much as she could from the get-go. And I think there was a subliminal message there. Even though my sister is not like that to me, I'm going to do that for someone else. That'll shine through. But yeah, there's a cool moment that's not really accurate whatsoever that we already talked about. There's a nail right through the wrist right here into a wooden wall.
Hammer just out of reach.
She's been maced. She's gotten kicked in the ribs. I mean, this girl's having a really bad day.
So Ash goes outside to try to find the keys that were thrown in the snowbank, leaving Lars, the main character, and the girl in the room. And that's where things get even messier because the little girl realized she's been threatened by those men. So now she's listening to the main character.
Yep, they team up together. Lars is in a frail state. He's very stressed out. He wants no one to get hurt. He also doesn't want to get caught. And they get just within reach. Darby tells little Jay, I need you to go cut the lights out, which is a fair distance away.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of talking. There's a lot of shouting. Another tense moment of don't you go over there. I've got the gun. Lights go out. Darby pulls the nail out, which is gruesome, with the hammer. Finally gets the hammer, pulls the nail out. She's got her wrist free and ends up.
But you're missing something.
Uh-oh, what did I miss?
Now, here is where I'm just going to go off a little bit.
Let's hear it.
Now, I know why this happened in this movie, but I feel like it was done in a way that was wrong.
Okay.
So, she's got the hammer. Little girl helped her get the hammer. Mm-hmm. She's going to pull this nail out of her arm, right?
Yep.
She doesn't just grimace and pull the nail out of her arm. Instead, she pulls some drugs out and does the drugs to give her superhuman pain ability. And to me, I
forgot
mean,
about that.
That's not something that's not really accurate in the first place.
Yep.
As far as how that would work. And I also feel it kind of says that, hey, drugs will take the pain away. It's a bad message to throw out there, especially to someone who's been in recovery and now going through all this. I get that they wanted to add this layer to the movie of, oh, I don't want to do drugs, but I have to get through the pain of this part. But to me, it was so wrongly done.
If I had to put a word on it,
I would have rather seen her force herself through the pain without the drugs. And to me, that would have said more.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, too, there is a part earlier in the movie before she starts to figure it. When she gets really stressed at the beginning of the lodge, she does pull it out, and she does that fidgety thing with her hand where she's like, it's so close. I can take it now if I want to, but she has the willpower not to. But in this situation, yes, you're completely right. That's my bad, leaving that part out. Yeah, she's going to pull the nail out of her arm. She's got her wrist nailed to a wooden wall, and she just decides she's going to take a bump real quick. And that just makes everything go away, which we know is not true, to your point.
Right.
But she powers through. I agree with you 100%. That's probably not the best message to send. I don't know. It feels unnecessary, I guess, to circle back to that point. But at this point, I believe they hit Lars with a hammer, and Ash comes back. Now we've got a tense standoff because Darby has a nail gun that you mentioned before. Or no, they have the real gun. They stole it from Lars.
Yep, they have a real gun. There was a nail gun, and the text that she was trying to send through on her phone finally went through.
Ooh, dun dun dun.
The police are on their way.
Yep.
So we got a big showdown coming up, and whether they can clean things up in the visitor center before the cops arrive, that's going to be the race.
It was really wild. I'm not really sure what happened at the end for the flinch. I believe it might have been a text message because the phone magically started working indoors again. But basically you have Darby holding a gun up to Lars' head. It's very tense. Ash has kind of put himself at a disadvantage. He only has a nail gun, which in this one, by the way, is pinpoint accurate and very powerful, by the way. Like, very convenient. But he ends up shooting his friend Lars directly in between the eyes. Doesn't go all the way in, but it's enough he can say, oh, I'm starting to feel weird. What do we do here? And at this point, Ash feels bad. The only time in this movie that you see him feel some sort of regret. Which is ironic because he doesn't actually care about the guy, but
he lost his fall guy.
He did, and now he's left to just, hey, it's all damage control at this point. We're gonna have to burn the building down, literally, which is what he does. Darby and Jay make a run for it. They're trying to escape, and probably I'm not trying to steal the Dead Meat podcast thing here, but like Golden Kill, like poor Lars trips over some blood from Ed, and then the nail hits his head directly forward. Nail goes all the way in. That guy wasn't going to make it out of here. I felt bad for him. I felt really bad, but that was a unique kill in the movie.
And we get the whole scene with the cop not knowing who to do and what to do when he shows up, and
more intensity, man.
I don't know if it was more intense as it is. This movie had a lot of stereotypical turns. Mm-hmm. I get that they had the linear story. They had the first twist with the girl in the van, and then the second twist with there being two guys, and then the third twist with the woman who was in on it. And then from there, it was all very straightforward. I felt like those three moments were what this movie was relying on to make it through this whole story and make fans and viewers get really into it. And I'm not sure it worked.
Yeah, no, I could see that, and I kind of agree. I like the characters, I like their stories, but I think, to your point, the way that they're connected, I think it could have been done a little bit better in all three phases. And if they were,
it wasn't very clean.
No, not at all. I don't want to use the word sloppy, but it was kind of jumbled. And to your point with the thing you mentioned earlier too about the doing of the drugs to pull the arm out, like probably don't do that. Have her power through. But yeah, like you said, the cops are there. The cops show up. There's a tense moment. There's a car crash. Darby and Jay try to get away. They crash into a pole because it's a blizzard outside and they're driving in a Firebird.
Right.
But she has the gun and Ash does not. He has the nail gun. So he's slowly inching to try to go ahead and put Darby out of her misery before he gets shot by a cop. But he gets shot by Darby and falls down. But unfortunately for her, when she gets out of the car, she's trying to finish the job and the cop shoots her. So now you're in turmoil because you're like, oh my God, this poor woman has been through the gamut tonight. And this turd is still alive over here, which he ends up, after she gets shot, she drops the gun, shoots the cop. The cop's dead now. And he would just took it out on that cop too. He'd shoot him with the nail gun a couple times. Yeah, it was wild. He shoots the cop with a nail gun quite a few times. I would say most satisfying kill of the movie, because I hated Ash from as soon as we find out he's a terrible person.
Right.
You're waiting. I'm like, it's going to pay off unless it's one of those movies where it doesn't, which I was prepared for. I can't wait till Ash dies because he's such a piece of shit in this movie. And, he does this really sick thing in the movie. He does it twice. That's the thing that made me hate him the most. He did it twice. He asked Darby how her father died, who was a Marine. I think he suffered from PTSD, puts a gun to her head here, and in the mouth. He says, how did your dad do it? Which is so evil. Such an evil thing to do. But your redemption comes if you want a good, feel-good ending. It comes right here in the form of a screwdriver right to the neck. And it was gruesome. And it took 30 seconds for him to die. And it was wonderful. So shout out to the director putting that in there because it was awesome.
In addition to the stuff with her talking about how her dad died, he did read her the text that her mom is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that, too, was kind of a dirty thing to do in a situation like that.
Ash is a dick in this movie.
I still sit here and wonder, the plot armor is so thick for that main character in this movie that the two bad guys had so many opportunities to either kill her or tie her up or throw her outside or run her over, whatever they needed to do.
There's a Home Alone element to this movie, for sure.
And they didn't take any of them, yet they were so quick to dispose of the other two.
Correct.
And that, to me, I mean, I kind of understood with Lars, because Lars didn't want to kill anybody.
No, not at all. Poor guy.
He didn't even want anybody to get hurt. But, I mean, the more I sat through this movie and I saw the situations just kind of bounce around her and situations that should have been fatal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they really wanted to get away, they'd have put that nail gun right against her head and pulled the trigger.
Yep. They
wouldn't have punched it through that wall. What good is nailing her arm to the wall? You're going to leave a witness? No, nobody is that stupid to do that.
Especially when you point blank shot two people in the chest and killed them. Well, actually, you shot both of them in the chest and then one in the head for good measure. So, yeah, you're 100% right. If it was actual reality, this would have been about 40 minutes shorter. This movie would have been a lot shorter, but the Hollywood ebbs and flows. It gives you a good feeling at the end, which is nice.
Well, the end of the movie was very Hollywood. She's back in rehab. She's been clean for, what was it, 52 days or something like that?
48 days. And
she's got some artwork on the wall from the little girl.
I like the fade out from her blurred vision. She actually crawls after she stabs Ash in the neck, which is awesome. Again, I have to bring that up again. She radios the cops radio, "Hey, we need help. Please send someone here." And you think she's left for dead pretty much. You see her look out and she's blurry and trying to seeing it her from her point of view. You see the silhouette of a mountain at night with the moonlight, and then you see a painting there, and then she's back to group therapy, and now it makes sense. That communication that I was talking about earlier, her being stubborn, now she has an actual story to tell and a motivating factor, and like you said, a very Hollywood ending. She's happy. She walks through the hall. She looks better. You can see her scars from the accident, but
Yeah.
the end was good because her sister came. That was also a nice positive if you like the warm, fuzzy, happy ending there. So,
Yeah, they tried to cover up a lot of that stuff from the middle of the movie, but it still left a kind of sour taste in my mouth. I wanted to like this movie more than I think I did, and that's a shame, because when we were hunting for movies to watch, and it's tough to find some newer releases that stack up against some of the best horror movies of all time. We've gotten lucky a few times and picked a couple of really good ones, and this one I don't think stood out enough to be special or unique.
I would tell you if you like thrillers, and this is really funny because I just have to give away one of Adam's personality secrets here. I like all the stuff that really scares me, is like the demonic stuff. All of that always terrifies me. It's not Adam's bag whatsoever. I feel like that's more widely accepted in the horror like good boy club than thrillers. They're like, nah, you're the distant cousin. You look like us, but you're not us, right? I think this is a decent thriller, but decent being the cap. And I agree with you. There are so many jumbled plot points that you talk about that could have been better, that they kind of, in the joint of the movie, connecting characters or pivotal scenes, they need to put some WD-40 on that, and they really need to make it more smooth, because it was kind of chunky, kind of sloppy a little bit. But
yeah, their transitions after twists just didn't really add up the way they should have. But this movie did have some really cool things going for it. I thought that they cast the movie well.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed all the actors in this movie. There wasn't any that I looked at and I thought, well, they don't really fit in what's going on here. Everything did what it needed to do from the actor standpoint. I enjoyed the scenery. I felt the moments out in the snow were beautiful. Some of the scenes shot at the rehabilitation center were a bit, I don't want to say generic, but I feel they lacked a lot of creativity in the
Yeah, we've seen these before. We've definitely seen those scenes before.
That's nothing really new, but the scenes in the snow and the scenes from inside the center were both strong, so I enjoyed those from that point. But yeah, it's not that I didn't like the movie, it's just that I know it can be better.
You know what this movie is, Adam? This is when you're hungry and you try somewhere new and you still get full, but it wasn't what you wanted.
Right.
And it leaves you a little underwhelmed. I'll just say it flat out. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Now, we've had some that have been worse than this movie. This is by far not even close to the worst movie we've done on this channel.
I still think it's weird that you're more harsh than I am. Because for me to give a 6, I would have to almost hate a movie.
No, see, I'm trying to keep the average right. If you give a 5 out of 10, you say the movie's average, and it's like whatever.
We're on different scales.
Yeah, I'm doing the 1 to 10 here.
See, I'm going with the school system where the 60's the F, anything under a 60.
I got you. Yeah, I always go on the 1 to 10, and I would say this gives me a 6. This gives you, when you get to green up top and then it slowly starts to fade down, red is at the bottom. There's an orange yellow in the middle. That's kind of where I'm at here. For those reasons you said, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But the positive in this movie is none of the characters and none of the acting was bad in this movie.
Right.
I kind of blame the writers and or the director for making it a little less than what it could have been. But I would say give it a whirl. If you have nothing going on one night, this isn't going to be one of those movies where you leave frustrated. You'll just be a little underwhelmed, but I thought the acting was great.
I thought this was, first I'll start out by saying I'll give it a 6.4. 6.4 for me. But if you're looking for something that maybe you're not going to pay the whole amount of your attention to, and it's a casual movie view, and you're not feeling like something completely gory, yeah, put it on. Yeah,
this is kind of the date thriller movie. That's a good point, man. If you have have a lucky lady or a lucky guy that you want to watch a thrilling movie with, it's not going to be super gross with guts everywhere. This is more friendly. Now there is violence. There is some gruesome violence, but it's in small doses and it's builds, But overall, the build in the movie's good. The acting's good. Just those points you were talking about, those couple little stumbles they have, they're major enough to shake things up a little bit. If you're guys like us that watch these movies and you can kind of tell what's going to happen, and you're like, all right, I want to see something different. I want to see something creative. Yeah, we've kind of seen this before. And we're going to call you out too. Like you said too, this movie could have been 40 minutes earlier. And so if they
I still don't understand
right
when she fell down the hill, hit her head on the tree and was knocked unconscious. All they got to do is follow her tumbling down the hill and shoot her in the head, and it's done.
The nail gun situation in there, they're just being jerks at that point. You've already blasted two people into the shadow realm at this point.
What's a third at that point?
Yeah, you're already there. We already know which one of you is going to do it and which isn't. I don't know. I don't get it, but not terrible, not the greatest. Give it a whirl if you, like you said, if you just want to put something on and you don't have to invest a lot into it. We will definitely let you know when there's a movie that you can't miss. We've had a couple of those on this channel where we're like, this movie is awesome, but
now
not quite.
I know we're moving past No Exit now, but we did do a review for the movie X.
Yeah.
And I have been seeing some more absolutely amazing reviews for X, and it's got a really good Rotten Tomato score. And I didn't really look at any of that before we did the review of it. So I am glad to see this movie getting a lot of love.
It was a natural, hey, we went off the gut. And just like this, too, the preview looked great. I asked you, you said, hey, what do you think of this? I said, hey, it looks good. Let's try it. It was a natural want to see for the movie X, not for this one. Yeah, dude, that was just meant to be. I'm glad that we reviewed that and watched that. That was an excellent film.
But if you were watching this by now, it's over on my Twitch channel, but I don't believe we have anyone watching on Twitch. But if you're watching this over on my YouTube, which it'll be available over there along with all of the other horror movie reviews.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, no.
Oh, there's a bunch of these.
Oh, I know. But yeah, if you're checking this out over my YouTube channel, we have the full catalog of all of our movie reviews over there. And there's some good ones, some that we didn't care for as much, but you could tell us what movies you want us to review next. Just head on over and talk to us on our social media. I'm MN Viking Zombie on everything. He is NC Dog Dude. We always enjoy talking about movies, and we've actually done some movie recommendation, I believe.
Did we? My memory is shot to crap. I've done.
Yes, I thought we had one recommended to us in chat that we did.
We may have. I know we've had movies recommended. I don't know if we had tackled them yet, but we'll always take your suggestions and give them a good once over. We'll see what we're trying to do here. And Adam said this before. I don't want to piggyback on your stuff, but we want to do stuff that's current because that's going to generate the algorithm, which is cool. What guy's going to wake up and be like, I want you to do Chucky 3 from 1999 or something like that right now. There's that one person, but this is new. This is fresh. And for me, I know, and especially for you, if you've already seen something, watching it again it's not nearly as fun. I like the fact that we're watching new and fresh things that neither one of us have seen, but this is a treat for me, man, because I want to get into the catalog that you and Kyle West have been into, because you guys have seen way more horror movies than I have. So every time we do one, I've added another to my collection. And
there's a few that we've skipped over. We skipped over the new Scream movie, the new Firestarter movie we haven't reviewed.
We still may do that if you want.
We could. But there should be more horror movies coming out, which means more of these. And whenever we both have time to sit down, we'd love to do more horror movie podcasts. And honestly, we've been talking for almost 50 minutes about this movie, so I don't know how we do it, either here or on the other podcast, but we are chatty guys.
We did it today. We did more of a breakdown scene by scene, which was really fun. We haven't done that necessarily for everyone, but
this is a movie I think required it because of the twists.
Absolutely. I did want to recommend, if you haven't seen it, I think I mentioned it in the chat before. There's another thriller coming out, I believe, the end of the month. It's called Black Phone with Ethan Hawke. Absolutely would love to review that if you're into it. If you haven't seen the preview for that, let me know your thoughts, man, because I like him in general as an actor anyways, but I couldn't believe he did kind of a thriller or a horror movie. So that's something up on the horizon. But yeah, like you said earlier, if anybody watches this later and you want to see a pretty recent horror movie and let us review it, shoot the suggestion over.
Absolutely.
Adam is here, and I am here.
Yeah.
It's on all the social media stuff, so shoot us a message. We would love to do that for you.
Yeah, thanks again for stopping in and hanging out for this movie review. We're going to try to do another one soon, hopefully. And I guess stay bloody and have fun.